If you're going to produce hemp, you have to deal with weeds. Anytime you grow a crop in Louisiana or any other place, you're going to be dealing with weed pressure. You have to start off clean, and you have to choose your fields wisely. When I look out at this field right here that could be a potential site for growing hemp, I see some things that trouble me a little bit, and it's drainage. I see this particular weed right here, which is a flat sedge that loves areas that have poor drainage and high water areas. And I see some aquatic like weeds here. We've had a lot of rainfall this year, and so this site right here appears to not have the best drainage in the world. So it may be something to consider that this field may not be a good candidate. If this were a good candidate right here, you have to start off clean, and that means disking this field up to try to destroy the weed pressure as best you can. Otherwise, there is a potential to use glyphosate, which has a 30-day plant-back interval, or paraquat, which has a 0 plant-back interval. Keep in mind, if you use glyphosate or you use paraquat, this field is no longer an organic field, and your end user may have a problem with you using a synthetic herbicide out here in this location. So that would be something I would keep in mind here. When I look out across here, I see some troubled areas that make me think this may not be a very good site for growing hemp. Hemp doesn't handle high moisture areas very well. There are some weeds out here that I believe you should key on when you're choosing your site. When I see something like a flat sedge, some of the more aquatic things out here, like this winged water primrose, these are things, this barnyard grass out here, these are areas, these are weeds that I would say would make this not be a good site. So choosing that site is very important. Looking at that weed pressure that you have before you grow that hemp, that's going to be very important because you just don't have a lot of options when it comes to weed management. When it comes to hemp weed control, keep in mind that we don't have any selective herbicides, synthetic herbicides labeled for hemp just yet. It's going to be organic products. You're going to have broadleaves out in your hemp crop, and this just happens to be Virginia buttonweed, but all broadleaves are going to have showy flowers. They're going to have veins that are netted, like this curly dock right here, veins that run netted, a taproot system. These are usually the more competitive weeds with a broadleaf crop. Like hemp, and so you got to keep in mind you're going to have broadleaves growing out in your hemp, and things like morning glory would be an issue. Hemp sesbania would be an issue. So there's a lot of broadleaf weeds that are going to be problem weeds in your hemp crop, and you're not going to have a lot of options out there other than some organic options. Possibly cultivation would be an option. So when I look out in this field further, I see a perennial grass, and I realize that whenever I'm preparing this field, if I don't use glyphosate to kill this perennial grass, it's likely, even though I disc it up, there's a very good chance this could be right back again because I'm going to chop it up. So grasses have parallel veins. Grasses also don't produce showy flowers. This is actually the flower of a grass plant. They're highly competitive as well. This is a perennial grass. You would expect it to be extremely competitive. It'd be highly important to try to destroy this before you get your crop in the field and start trying to grow hemp. You wouldn't want to have to deal with a perennial grass like vasi grass. Now we also have a lot of annual grasses out here too. I see a lot of foxtail out here. Foxtail is an annual grass that produces thousands of seeds. It germinates very early, February, early March, here in this area of the state. So foxtail would be something I would be worried about here. I see a very high population that's going to seed. These are the kind of weeds, you see them here this year. You're going to be dealing with them next year in next year's crop because there's a seed bank full of seed that you're going to be working with. So you got to be very careful to try to keep the weed pressure down as best you can. So another category that you're going to be dealing with, especially in Louisiana, is going to be sedges. Sedges are a completely different kind of plant. They look like grasses, I know, but sedges are in a completely different family. They're in the Cyperaceae family. Grasses are in the Poaceae family. So certain sedges that like certain types of soil, and this particular sedge is flat sedge and it likes wet areas, and that gives me concern if I'm picking this site that it is having a lot of pressure from flat sedge. Flat sedge loves aquatic wet areas, so this may not be a good site to grow hemp because of that. Sedges, again, are grass-like plants. They can be pretty hard to control. They're among the worst weeds in the world. So keep in mind that sedges are a plant that's going to have triangular stems, and this particular plant right here has a triangular stem. Grasses are going to have flat stems, round stems. They may have hollow stems. All sedges are going to have triangular stems. Sedges are going to be a problem if I'm going to grow hemp in this field next year. So another broadleaf out here that really makes me wonder about this site is there's a very high population of morning glory. Morning glory, again, is another broadleaf. It has veins going in different directions, netted venation. But this particular plant right here is a vining plant that would vine up your hemp. As you can see, it's vining up this flat sedge right here. It'll entangle that hemp. Very, very competitive. It's an annual. It makes a lot of seed. There's probably a lot of seed in the soil here. This would be a plant I would be worried about. There's a lot of morning glory out here in this field. This would be a huge problem if you're trying to grow hemp, since we don't have any herbicide options to really try to control it. So keep in mind, you're going to have a multitude of different weed pressures out here when you're trying to grow hemp, and there are not a lot of options available to you. So you have hemp growing out in the field. What are your options? Well, of course you can cultivate. That's definitely an option, but keep in mind that hemp does grow pretty tall, and eventually you may not be able to cultivate over it. You can also till between the rows with tillers. So these are all options: mechanical tillage, hoeing it out, hand pulling weeds. These are all options for you, especially if you're growing CBD type hemp. There are also these so-called 25B products that are out there available to you. These are products that do not have to be registered through the EPA. They're organic. Vinegar-based products are out there. There are also some out there that are like clove oil and citric acid. These are all some things that are available to you. May not be economical to use them, may not even be practical to use them, but these are all options for you. They would simply just burn the weed back. You'd have to spray weeds that are very small, newly emerged annuals, not very effective on perennial weeds at all, but on newly emerged annuals they are pretty effective. But is this going to be economical for you? Cultivation may be your best bet if you're not going to grow on plasticulture. So cultivation is a possibility for managing weeds, but I tell you, one of the better ways to keep weeds out, to eliminate weed pressure as best you can, is by using something that we use in vegetable production, and that's plasticulture. Plastic covers for these rows are very, very effective. They pretty much eliminate a lot of the competition for weeds. Plants can grow without weed pressure or very limited weed pressure, so it's highly effective. It also helps with disease management, cuts down on some of the insect issues too. So plasticulture is likely the way to go if you're going to be growing hemp on a wider scale. Pretty effective. Now, so hemp is good at eliminating most weeds, but I tell you, the #1 ranked weed problem in the world, purple nut sedge and some of the other sedges, they're able to penetrate through down in through the plasticulture area. So this is, again, the yellow nut sedge right here. This is purple nut sedge. But look right here. This has only been down. This plasticulture has only been down. These plastic covers have been down for about 4 or 5 days. Already, sedges have poked through it and starting to become a problem. In a week or so, there'll be a lot of sedges poking through this. Many weeds can't come through this. Sedges, among the worst weeds in the world, purple nut sedge is the #1 ranked weed problem in the world. That's not stopped by this barrier right here. Within a few days, it's able to poke right through it. So that will be the pressure that you're going to have is going to be some type of sedge poking through the plastic culture area. So again, keep in mind, we just don't have a lot of options when it comes to weed management in hemp. This is by far the best way to grow hemp on a broader scale. Now you have these inner row areas right here that you'll either mow with a mower or you'll till with a tiller, something like that. These areas in between the rows, but you can manage that a little bit better. This is the area where the hemp's going to be growing. This area would be ready to plant hemp. One thing about growing hemp on plastic, it is the most effective way to eliminate weed pressure in a crop production area. Highly effective in vegetable crops, highly effective when you're growing hemp and keeping weeds down. This is by far the way to go if you're going to grow CBD hemp.